Who remembers the Legacy of Goku series on the Game Boy Advance? I know I sure do. The big-headed and tall-hair sprites were my favorite as a kid, being a longtime DBZ fan. With the action and RPG elements in each game, I was amazed, eventually beating the games probably 3 times each throughout my life. Now, before we talk about any possible sequel ideas, I want to talk a little bit about the history of the games first. The first game in the series, The Legacy of Goku, was released in the United States on May 14th and in Europe on October 4th, 2002. Legacy of Goku was based around the Saiyan and Frieza saga in the anime series.
The game was made by Webfoot Technologies in the United States.
But it not getting a release in Japan was kind of a shock, due to Dragon Ball Z was created in Japan and has a huge fanbase there. Yes, the first Legacy of Goku did have its issues, from a slow and very weak Goku, along with getting very bad reviews. I would have to say I loved it. I felt like I was in the Dragon Ball Z universe. Walking around as Goku for the first time felt amazing. It was something I've always wanted to feel as a kid. I remember getting Dragon Ball Z Budokai 1 on PS2 thinking it was going to be something like this. To me, eventually finding out, yes, it was a fighting game, still an amazing game though, The Legacy of Goku ended up selling over 1.2 million copies in the United States only. The next game in the Legacy series was the fantastic Dragon Ball Z Legacy of Goku 2, released on June 17th, 2003 in the US and Europe.
Legacy 2 is based around the Cell Saga in the TV series.
The game took a much better crowd reaction this time around, getting good reviews and a much greater appreciation for the series. You can tell that this time around, the developers took much more time enriching the storytelling, and they made the game feel much more fast-paced, with stronger feeling character movements,
and adding things like transformations and playable characters.
The game really did feel like more time and money went into making it this time around. This can be shown in the developer interview, The Making of Legacy of Goku 2, showing how much time they just spent on cliffs.
The cliffs can show up in the desert, cliffs can show up anywhere. They might have snow on the cliffs. So cliffs, different kinds of cliff angles and lighting and all of the different important things that would go into the artwork of the cliff, that cliff. So here, the cliff has been broken up in taller cliffs or longer cliffs, or just cliffs that are a lot more complicated and not flat looking. And we'd have cliffs that have grass tops, and we have cliffs that have a dark bottom and cliffs that have a light bottom, and an interesting cliff from some of these pieces of the cliff. These cliffs. I'm gonna make a cliff out of this. An interesting cliff.
It ended up doing so well that it got a Japan release, Dragon Ball Z The Legacy of Goku 2 International, only exclusive to Japan on July 23rd, 2004. The game was still the same besides the character profile changes and using the original Japanese names, but on the parade blimp it still said Hercule. Wonder how many Japanese people thought, what the heck, or who the heck is a Hercule? Lastly, the third game in the series was Boo's Fury, released on September 14th, 2004 in North America. The game focuses around the end of the Dragon Ball Z series and added things such as adding equipment to your character to boost stats and strength, and now adding a block button by clicking the R button of the Game Boy Advance, and the energy block by holding B. Also adding the ability to transform to Super Saiyan 3, the game got mostly mixed reviews and didn't seem to hold up to some as strong as Legacy of Goku 2 got.
And to me, I feel like it didn't have the same grinding aspect to leveling up as Legacy 2 did, and I actually loved that of Legacy 2, the struggle to get stronger, to fight the big bosses and actually feel like there was a threat to you. And that added some excitement and horror to the game.
I just didn't feel that Boo's Fury had that. Just by adding some equipment to your character, it made the game way too easy for me.
The biggest wonder to me is why they didn't add Legacy of Goku in the title as a child. I would have to think that it wouldn't be good for those who didn't have any clue that the sequel was made when released. For example, when I was a kid, I only found out by buying a dual GBA card including DBZ GT Transformation and Boo's Fury, and that added to one of the possible reasons that the game didn't sell as well as the others. Now let's talk about what I want to talk about the most. Could there ever be a Legacy of Goku 4? Now it's very obvious that it wouldn't be on the GBA due to the fact that the last North American released GBA game was released in 2008. But it also never saw a sequel on the DS either.
Now that is 9.8 years since the release of Boo's Fury. That is almost 10 years that they haven't made a DBZ game, and that is something to worry about. But is it possible for a sequel on the 3DS, or something that might come after the 3DS? I did some looking on the internet to come across Webfoot Technologies' Facebook page that has 767 likes,
to discover that they now mostly make apps for app stores for mobile devices such as iPads
and iPods. They seem to only make simple, kid-based games such as Krabby Cats, 3D Frog Frenzy, and more. On their Facebook, I see that they made a fan page for the Legacy of Goku series that only seems to have a few likes, sadly, but looking through their posts made by others on their page, I came across questions asked by fans. Now, happily enough, they answered some of them. Someone asked, "Why instead of Legacy 3 did you name it Boo's Fury, and please make more quality games like those?" With their response of, "Some console games are in the works, stay tuned." But sadly, that was answered in May of 2012. Now, the one that really got me a little bit more excited was the question of,
would you ever make a Legacy of Goku on the 3DS, or even an HD remix? With their response of, "If the powers that ask us to do another DBZ game, we'd love to make one." But that said, sadly, it was answered in 2011, but knowing that if they were asked to do so, they would makes me very excited, even if it is very unlikely.
but the wonder would be, where would it take place? With the release of Dragon Ball Z Battle of the Gods in Japan and a soon-to-be North American release of the film, they could focus around the new aspect of the DBZ series, adding Super Saiyan God and maybe leveling up to fight Bills or other gods in the DBZ universe. Now that would be amazing, but it could be based around the GT universe, but Webfoot already made a GT game on the GBA called Transformation.
But it was a side-scrolling type game and had nothing to do with the Legacy series.
Now, it could be based around the original Dragon Ball series or villains shown in the DBZ spin-offs, such as Broly or Frieza's new brother Chilled shown in the newer Bardock movie released in Japan.
Now, would you love to see a fourth Legacy of Goku? What would you want it to include and have in it, and what it could be based around? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.